Hello everybody and welcome to the start of a 5-day lightning course in orchestral programming. What I'm going to be doing is a series of 5 short 10-minute videos, each one of which is going to look at a specific aspect of orchestral programming, which will help your music sound a great deal better. Today we're looking at articulations and key switches and things like that. Tomorrow it's going to be dynamics and continuous controllers and all those kind of things which make some of you go, oh no. Day 3 we're looking at legato. Day 4 it's going to be the size of the section and why that matters. It's crucial. Day 5 mic positions, the sound of the room and all that. And then after that, at some point, I'm going to do a slightly longer video, which will bring the whole thing together and show you how the whole thing works in practice. So let's start with day 1, which is articulations. I should say there is a downloadable thing underneath this, a PDF, which will give you a sort of summary of what I'm talking about, so you can have it there and go, what did he say? So if you want to download that and follow along, then the idea is watch the video, download the PDF, try it out for yourself. Okay? Yeah, sounds good to me as well. Right. So articulations. What is an articulation? If you were to lock a musician in a room for an hour, and I'm not recommending you do that. No, I'm definitely not. And told them to play, it's very unlikely they play the same note the same way twice. Because every time you play a note, here's a penny whistle, which I'm really, really bad at. Every single note of that is slightly different. It's either slurred or it's legato or it's short or whatever. There's so many different ways of playing a note. And your ear is used to that. And if you don't do that when you're playing a sampled instrument, people instantly notice it and go, oh, this doesn't sound very realistic, because it's all the same. For example, if we take one note which I've sampled from that whistle, by itself it sounds fine. But as soon as I go, it sounds absolute rubbish. And that's because it is just one recording of one note, and there's no variation in it, there's no velocity difference, there's nothing. It's absolute pants. So sample manufacturers have taken this on board, and what they come up with is a very straightforward solution, which is, well, I say straightforward solution, says the man who doesn't have to program this stuff, okay, just buys it and loads it up. Here is Cinematic Studio Strings. So you can have a sustain, you can have tremolo. When we're talking about strings, think of the number of different ways there are of playing a note. Sustain, tremolo, trills, marcato, pizzicato, measured tremolos, harmonics, staccato, and those are just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. Now, what you need to do to make your music sound more realistic is use as many articulations as possible. In other words, each note has to be crafted just like a real musician would play it towards the end goal of making the whole thing sound like a cohesive phrase. If you just play with one kind of approach, and let me show you what that sounds like, it doesn't sound as good as it could. Sorry. That was not Cinematic Studio Strings. That was me playing the thing. Okay, here we go. So, look, it's a good sample library, but just sticking to Marcato won't do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and introduce some short articulations for when we're coming down, and it goes like this. Now, you can start messing about with that, and you can do all kinds of things to make it sound more realistic. So maybe we change the velocity and things like that. But that is the difference which multiple articulations can make. Now, if you think that we're actually dealing here with 8 different articulations, and there are probably 800 in the vocabulary of most string players, you're only ever going to be scratching the surface. I mean, even in an epic library like BBC Symphony Orchestra, they've got legato, longs, concertino, flautando, col legno, pizzicato, staccato. How many have they got? They've got, so that's 8. They've got 12 different articulations, and that seems like an enormous amount, and it is an enormous amount, but it's still only scratching the surface. So if you don't use all the ones which are offered to you, your music is going to sound quite artificial. And whilst it might sound all right when you're just playing it to start with, the cumulative effect of having all your instruments sounding a bit is that you turn out a piece of music which doesn't sound anything like a live orchestra at all. So you have to think of each line of music like a real musician. You are that violinist, okay? And you have to think, how, as that violinist, am I going to play each of these notes so that the whole thing sounds like a cohesive line of music? And that's why you've got to use multiple articulations. I said it. Good. Right. So how do you change articulations? The most straightforward way, in a way, and the way most sample developers use, is called key switches. So if you play, for example, if you play your violin, it just goes down to G below middle C, that one there. After that, nothing, because that's the bottom end of the note. All these keys, therefore, can be used as switches to change articulations. In other words, they're notes which lie outside the range of the instrument. So if we look here, and you hit C0, for example, which is that note there, it will change the articulation to a sustain. Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. And every time you change, you play the note, it goes through a different articulation. Now, some people find this easy, some people definitely don't, because it means doing two things at once. And as you know, some people are really bad at multitasking. So I'll give you an example of how this works, because what you have to do is you play one line with your right hand while your left hand is selecting the articulation. So it goes sort of when you get used to it, it's really quite an easy way of working. And the advantage of this way of working is you actually get to hear things in real time. So you get to play the way that articulation should be played. There are other ways of doing this, which basically involve playing in all the notes to start with and then assigning the articulation to them. But you're going to lose that sense of spontaneity when you do it. So key switches are one way of doing it. Another popular way of doing it is you basically assign different articulations to different channels. So each of these, if we bring this one up, what we got going here, this is Berlin strings, okay, which is a phenomenally good library. Here we go, Berlin strings. Hello, Berlin strings. Now, what we've got is legatos, sustains, espressivo, spiccato, staccato, tremolos, all on different tracks. Now, this suffers to some degree from the same problem of spontaneity that I was talking about before, but it makes it easy. There's a number of advantages to this. Okay, so let's play that same line in. Oh. Okay. Now, what are we going to use next? Spiccato or staccato? That's the spiccato sound. Here's the staccato. I think we're going to do the first two as... Let's do that. I should have done this with a click, shouldn't I? And then the last two, we can go back to... Oh, espressivo. Let's try that. Now, the reason I quite like this way of working, and this is the way I've worked in the past, there's no one size fits all solution which is going to suit everybody. The advantage to this one is that it's much easier to control each individual articulation, because you might have noticed when we're doing the key switches, however well programmed it is, you're going to get strange sort of bumpy things in the velocities, and someone's going to be really loud like me and someone's going to be really quiet. And this way allows you to adjust the volume of each individual articulation much more easily, and you can then get in there and change the timing and do all kinds of things. So, but these are the two principal ways of doing it: key switches or separate tracks. You can use things like articulation IDs and expression maps, which are a way of assigning in the editor. You can go into the editor and assign articulations to individual notes. That also works, and some people love that. But it doesn't really matter how you do the multiple articulations, as long as you do it. Please do it, because it just, even though this simple line here is going to take a lot of tweaking to get it to sound really perfect, you've got to think like a musician. You've got to think like an instrumentalist, as though you actually know how to play the penny whistle, okay? And you've got to try and make your lines sound realistic. And the only way you'll do that is multiple articulations, okay? Right. That's all I've got for you today. Tomorrow we're going to be back talking about controllers and dynamics. Remember to download the PDF guide underneath this little video. And if you want to stay with us for duration, you better subscribe. Bettant you? I don't know. Don't know where that comes from. Right. Go and give that a try, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.